Welcome back to the Game House. Esports moves on. It keeps growing, even in the face of everything that we see happening with the scandals. When you're talking Tfue versus FaZe, or you're talking major names moving around. You had Courage recently join. Courage recently joined 100 Thieves, and it doesn't. It's a symptom of the growing situation right now that esports is still exploding, even with the fact that some of these major organizations are struggling to make money. Doesn't change the fact that they still have to hire people. And I have with me two of the guys from all the way from the UK, and they're with me again from Hitmarker Jobs. I have Cam and Rich. Guys, thanks once again for making time for me today. I know that when it comes to managing the time zones, that you guys are up at all hours, that when it's about, when it's late here on the west coast of America, and it's actually a wonderful time for you guys to be awake, and you're always responding to things on social media, putting out great content. So thank you very much for being here, guys.
Share that, Bill. Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's a nice change for us to be able to talk about Hitmarker with somebody who's interested. Instead of just talking amongst ourselves.
Thank you very much. I find what you guys do to be really, really amazing. You're putting a human touch on a process that has become that in every other industry has turned into just it's an automated black hole of I guess the best way to put it is an automated black hole of despair. Most of the time people apply for jobs and they never hear back. But you guys, some of the things that you guys have done have really caught my eye. And one of the things that I see on Twitter each week is you guys do like a sort of a graphics montage of one of the candidates that you have. And so sort of talk about that. Talk about that little piece right there. It seems simple. It seems something that, it's just one person, but you still have to comb through their profile, and you have to create the video, and then with all the candidates that you guys had, you had to choose one candidate each week to do this for. So sort of talk about how that idea came to life, what you guys do in your process. Doing the process, and then the results of that, because that isn't something that you see very much.
Yeah, so I'll talk about how we came up with the idea, and it's kind of Cam who manages it with Laurie, who's our motion guy at the minute. But at the beginning, it was kind of an idea that I think came from our founder in just a meeting that we'll have when we have come up with ideas for Hitmarker and various things we can do. And it was suggested that we start doing maybe a candidate spotlight on the website. Originally, that was the plan, to actually do the spotlights on the website, promote them through Twitter. But it was around the same time that we were looking to kind of change up how we did content through Hitmarker anyway. So we came up with a content schedule where we were trying to do one big piece of motion graphics content each day, excluding the weekends, just to have something that we could become like a weekly, get people into the habit of expecting to receive something weekly at the same time. So on Monday, we do the jobs roundup from the week prior. On Tuesday, we post the stats that we have from the past week in terms of number of jobs, how many paid jobs, which company posted the most jobs, just the basic stats that you can get through the database. Wednesday is candidate spotlight day. Thursday used to be company spotlight day, but it didn't kind of get so much engagement. So we've switched over the polls to be Thursday, which I know you always engage with personally as well.
Yes.
And then Friday, we do the most viewed jobs of the week. So kind of try to use the data that we collect in a bunch of different ways. But the candidate spotlight was really just like, we were getting at the moment, we get over 100 new people signing up to the website every day. And And it was kind of, they join the website, they apply for a bunch of jobs. They do have a profile page on the website, but a lot of people seem to be frustrated that they didn't get much visibility outside of that. And they kind of did just enter exactly what you said, like the black hole of applying for tons of jobs, maybe only hearing back from a handful of them. So the idea was to become more proactive and to try and promote those candidates individually, the ones that we could really vouch for and we maybe have had interactions with in the past. So the way we set it up was it was kind of an invitation thing at the beginning. We obviously speak to people on DM all the time. We knew the kind of people who were looking for certain jobs and who we thought could benefit from getting some exposure. And then after that, it's become sort of an open invitation. So anybody can get spotlighted if they reach out to us to ask. We send them to a Google form, and then I'll hand over to Cam because he now handles the process kind of day to day, and he'll talk about how he selects people and how it works.
Yes, I mean, it really is as simple as people reach out and then we just get their info and post it whenever we can. We usually have quite a bit of a backlog for that reason, because we're not really going to turn people down unless there's sort of a serious reason we'd have to. We've got sort of 3 or 4 people lined up at the moment, and we've got 1 to come out today, but we don't sort of want to post too many to dilute the feature, if you know what I mean. Right. So we want to make sure that has its value, so we're not sort of scaring off potential employers from just throwing too many candidates at them, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's as simple as we go to the Google form, pass it on to Laurie, who makes all our sort of visuals, and then line it up. There's not too much sort of selection that goes into it. It's free. It's not something we charge for.
Okay.
And it's something that people reach out to us for. And if we think there's sort of marketable skills there, then we'll do a spotlight on them.
Okay. So, excuse me. So, from that idea, so the size that you guys are right now. I mean, so looking at your site right now, there are 800 and so looking at it right now, you have over 800 jobs. You've 800 jobs available. I don't know exactly how many users that you guys have. So is something like this, when you guys hit a scale, when instead of 800 jobs you have 3,000 jobs, and then for every job you have 8 to 20 people filling out the application. So 3,000 jobs, maybe 12 to 15,000 people on the site. Is this something that you think that you can, that when you hit scale will be doable?
Yeah, for sure. It's a decision that we have to make kind of on the business side. So one thing we talk about a lot and a feature request that we get regularly is just candidates wanting to have more of like a LinkedIn type experience where they're able to post their full profile and have employers come and take that profile directly off the website without having to apply for jobs. Now, the cynical side of me kind of thinks that's because people are inherently lazy and they don't want to do job applications. And they just want to kind of make a profile page once and then expect that employers are going to just come to our website and they're going to spend the time going through the applicants who are maybe categorized into like marketing, social media, photography, videography, that kind of stuff. I think a lot of that might come from people being a bit naive in terms of how things work. Hiring managers struggle for time anyway. I think it would be a feature that might get used by some of them, but I'm not sure how many come to Hitmarker and maybe spend an hour or two just combing through loads of different resumes, reaching out to people. It's kind of a big undertaking to do that. So this was kind of our halfway solution. I don't see any reason why we would stop doing it. If anything, we might actually start doing it more because the process now is very streamlined. It doesn't take much time out of our week to be able to do a spotlight like this. We might change the style up a little bit. We've got intentions of maybe moving towards video. So instead of just doing a motion graphic, we might do the graphic and then allow the candidate maybe a minute or a minute and a half, because Twitter has quite strict rules on video length, themselves a little bit through the spotlight. So you get to hear from the person instead of just reading some stats and information about the person. So I think you'll kind of see the feature evolve over time. We won't get rid of it. if the value continues to grow, obviously we get feedback from some people who we do spotlight and they see an increase in business. Maybe if they're a freelance designer or a photographer, they might get new contracts through being spotlighted. Or obviously we've had people who we've spotlighted who've been picked up and gone into full-time roles or new positions based on the spotlight. If the value keeps increasing like that, then to be totally honest, it might be a service that we start charging people for further down the line. And be able to prove the value behind it.
Very nice. Okay, so that concept that you have with your content is great when you're providing value. So you actually have a schedule each week of things that you do, showing your stats, doing your polls. So when it comes to the polls, this is something that I've sort of wondered about myself. What kind of, I mean, you've been doing it now for a couple of months now. You have some decent feedback and some data on some of the questions that you've asked. What's the most popular poll that you've had so far?
It's a good question. We do keep the stats on all of them. The recent ones haven't been doing so well because they've probably been a bit less controversial. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of find that the ones that are talking about maybe volunteer roles.
It might have been the first one we did, which was volunteer roles.
Yeah, I think that was the most popular because everyone kind of has an opinion whether they believe in unpaid work or not, and they're not afraid to share that opinion. When you start getting into the more nuanced questions like we've been asking lately, I think people feel less confident in giving an opinion on things because they might not be so informed. So yeah, the volunteer one was a good one. You get also other ones, just more the general ones where if you think about our following, so we've probably got just over 10,500 followers now. All of them legit, like no paid for followers. So feasibly we could hit 10,500 people with that poll over time. But we probably get at best maybe 1,000 votes in the poll. Mm-hmm. I think the more general the question is, the more likely you are to get someone voting on it, because we could just go back to doing basic ones like which country are you looking for esports jobs in or something like that. But you don't get much value in terms of the data that you collect from that. So it's a tough balance. It's kind of balancing off the engagement with the quality of data that you get back from the answers that you receive. It's like a juggling act on that side.
Right. I'm sure that you guys see some interesting when you go back through those polls, and I'm sure you see some interesting responses and some interesting people. So just as sort of a general question about your process so far, are you seeing expectations sort of? It felt like to me from our first couple of conversations that expectations of candidates were sort of out of alignment with what the job, or were sort of out of alignment with what the whole job was expecting from them. Are you seeing candidates now after being on the site for a bit and interacting? Are you seeing those expectations sort of come back to reality?
I think so. I think what's helped is the fact that there are definitely more entry level and junior level opportunities available now than there have been in the past. So the big issue, if you remember, that we talked about in the past was that we have over 20,000 registered users on the website now.
Right.
And the majority of them are quite junior, maybe people who are still in high school or studying at college or fresh out of college, who haven't really got any real world job experience. And that's ultimately the generation that esports belongs to. So they aren't jaded and haven't been through like Indeed and LinkedIn and all the different websites and all the different industries that me or you might have been through before getting involved with esports. I think they were very put off because in the past, certainly about a year ago, I would say the majority of roles that we posted were asking for 3+ years of experience in esports or gaming. And that meant that the pool that people were fishing in was pretty small comparatively. Obviously, a year further down the line, you've got another group of people who've been using the website for that long, who've got an extra year of experience underneath their belt. But I think a big thing is just the fact that there's still more money coming into the space. Bigger companies are getting involved in esports in some way. and those companies tend to be the ones who can offer the more junior level roles.
Very nice.
Entry level roles. Yeah, so it does seem to be the gap is narrowing, I would say, a little bit, but it's still a long way to go, really.
Speaking of gaps being narrowed now, and also tying into the volunteer concept, the percentage, I've actually been watching this on Twitter as you guys post your stats, the percentage of paid and unpaid jobs seems to be getting, I mean, there was the whole conversation around doing unpaid work, and then you had the camp of, well, you need the experience, and then someone says, yeah, but I'm not going to work for 2 years for free, sort of a thing. And then you had people that were complaining that all the jobs were all unpaid, and you're like, no, actually it's over 80% of the jobs are paid positions. So you guys grow, and you guys have been doing this, you've been for a while now. So sort of talk about your growth, talk about the percentages, how they've changed over time.
Yeah, so I mean, if you probably looked at this time period last year, we were probably posting around 20% of the roles you're posting with volunteer, maybe a little bit higher. Like nowadays, we're probably posting maybe 5-10% volunteer roles. And I think there's probably two reasons for that. One being sort of the more visibility the site has, the more companies are going to obviously put jobs on our website. So there's definitely more paid jobs coming in, which obviously pushes the ratio of paid to unpaid higher up towards paid. And I also think we became a lot more strict with the volunteer roles. Like we have such a sort of active presence on socials, so we can listen to what people say. And we always take the feedback on board, and we were hearing that people weren't sort of happy with all the volunteer roles we had. Some people thought that some of them. So we became a lot more sort of strict in which ones we allowed on the website. We don't allow any copy job descriptions because we think that sort of shows a lack of effort from the company. To do a role for free, then you should really be writing a unique job description at the least. And we also don't take jobs that are too short. So if there's not sort of much effort put into the job description again. And I think that sort of has also posting the sort of less valuable volunteer roles, which in turn means there's fewer to be posted on the website. So from us being a bit stricter, and then also more paid jobs coming onto our website. But we do still think that with the sort of valuable volunteer roles from people with experience and that really can sort of guide a 16, 17, 18-year-old into those paid positions down the line, we do think there is value in that still. I think last week was actually our best week ever for the number of paid jobs we posted compared to unpaid. It was 95% paid. So that was really, really cool to see. Throughout the year.
Yeah, it's also kind of a natural shift in the way we've done business as well. So I came into this in November 2017, and at that time we were really just starting out, and we were kind of behind our competitors in terms of number of jobs that were being posted, regardless of whether they were paid or unpaid, and the number of companies that were using the website to post roles. So if you think about our kind of process from a development perspective and a growth perspective, in the early days, the easiest thing for us to do to increase the number of jobs being posted on the website was to speak to the volunteer organizations and say, look, we're a free platform, you can come and post jobs here and we'll advertise them on your behalf. And that meant that in the early days, like there were some months where the volunteer roles would number over 50% in terms of the ratio. And that's simply because we were doing groundwork and going out and getting all the volunteer orgs that we could find to come and use Hitmarker.
Right.
Obviously,
okay. Right.
It's moved, just naturally it's moved towards, we now have conversations with like probably the big, what you would call the big companies in esports, and those are the companies that we focus on from a business development perspective to get them using Hitmarker. And if volunteer orgs sign up and use the website, that's kind of an organic thing because they've seen us on Twitter or they've heard about it. We don't actively go out searching for those roles anymore. So I think that's also played quite a big part. It's just outfit back when we started it was done as a hobby. It's 2 years old now, the platform, and at the beginning it was like a volunteer run company, volunteer run website, like a lot of these other companies are. So I think as we've got more professional, the kind of listings on the website have got more professional at the same time.
Okay, so speaking of professional, I want to say last week there was sort of a controversy scandal where somebody said that a job that was posted on your site ended up being when someone applied and interviewed, the person doing the interview asked the candidate for cash. So I didn't catch the whole story. So sort of clue me in here.
Okay, so yeah, that was stuff. We try to fine line with this in terms of how public we are with how some organizations behave, but I think we've got to the point now where we're probably big enough and reputation where if we don't say anything, then who's going to say anything? And it seems to me that accountability in esports generally is kind of a buzzword at the minute. You'll see it with Denial and a few of the other orgs who are constantly being pressured about their business practices, which in our opinion is a good thing because we want everybody in esports to be operating on a level and to be kind of trustworthy and open. So in this particular case, that definitely didn't happen. So the organization posted the role for long enough now to kind of know that when a role comes through, and I mean, you would probably be the same, you're kind of instantly suspicious of anything that sounds a little bit too good to be true. With a full-time contract applied and like a salary on it, and the salary wasn't enough to be considered a minimum wage full-time role, which is what kind of our threshold is based on where the role is posted from. So we reached out to the org, had a conversation with them, and they were kind of like, it's fine to change that to freelance, but it's definitely going to be a paid role. Then after it was approved and posted and they'd received probably 5, 10, 15 applications, they submitted came through from somebody who said, I applied for this role, got all the way through to interview, and then at the end of the interview, I was kind of told that, yeah, you look like you'd be a good fit, but you would actually need to pay for the role yourself by investing in the org. And you won't actually receive a salary. So once the guy had told us that and kind of shown proof of that, then we thought the only thing we could do was kind of suspend the org from the website, send them a message explaining why, and without kind of naming them online, just make a post to kind of say that this won't be tolerated. If people are found doing this, then the accounts will be suspended. And if people keep doing it, we will just start naming and shaming in the future and create a blacklist where if people have had bad experiences and they can prove to us that it was a bad experience, then shine a light on that, because it's happened a few times in the past year or so. You'll hear about people who get jobs through the website and the experience that they have in the job might not be so great. Some quite haunting stuff on that front at times. By that stage, there's not much we can do because it's so far gone. When it's still in an application process phase, and if we hear about things at interview that aren't sounding quite right, like there's been orgs who've posted full-time roles in the past, and then some of our really good candidates have applied for it, like people that we know could get jobs with some of the biggest and best orgs around, and then they've been offered a salary at the end of it of like $200 a month or something like that.
Wow.
Oh. It happens, but I think a lot of the times it might be more ignorance than malice, and kind of people post it as a full-time role thinking that that just means that they're expecting the person to work and commit full-time hours. The definitions that we have on the website, we kind of explain that full-time roles are full-time hours, but they must be paid at minimum wage or above. Anything that isn't that goes under the realm of freelance, because a part-time role is still a full employed role where you would expect to have benefits, you would pay taxes, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you've had your share of experiences as well where things might not be what they seem.
Well, and I think that story is really eye-opening, because when somebody signs up on your site, they're making the assumption that these are companies and businesses that have established practices, they have a solid cash flow, and they understand the terminology that they're using. And
exactly.
while you guys have spent a lot of time educating the job applicants, I find it takes words out of my mouth. That you have to educate the people that post the jobs about what it means to have a full-time job. And
exactly.
and I shake my head. I'm like, esports doesn't even know how to do business. Why I don't understand that concept of how, and I guess this speaks to a larger issue of the industry itself is not very old, and so previous business practices and previous groups survived on the passion for so long that now we've hit a threshold where we have to take the next step in the development portion of understanding laws and understanding what you're saying, how you're saying it, and just the fact that somebody would post a job and then at the end of the interview process ask the candidate to invest in the org, that blows my mind. You would never ask an accountant who's going through the application process to get an accounting job at the end, oh, by the way, we need $1,000 from you to make this work. That whole story just blows my mind, and it shows that this industry needs some maturity big time. You know what I'm saying?
Some parts of it, and I mean that was made worse by the fact that, as you said, Cam in particular, every time we get one of these jobs through where something doesn't feel quite right, we do reach out and speak to the people involved before posting the role. And a lot of times the answer comes back and it isn't satisfactory, so the role doesn't get approved and doesn't get posted on the website. People will just outright lie, and there's not much more we can do other than kind of take them at their word and then ask, we know have applied for the job, kind of what their experience was through interview. I definitely don't think it's the whole industry, but I think there's a lot of people who are still running kind of bedroom orgs and things. They're trying to get something started and they may not have any business experience, and it leads to them. But if you take a step back from this situation for a minute though, that manager or the kid who runs the org has wasted a lot of his own time there as well. So it's kind of like, so you post a job, you get a bunch of people applying because they think they're going to get paid. You schedule interviews and you hold interviews with them. So you've probably spent, 3, 4, 5 hours of your time at least. You get to the end of the interview and then you hope that one of these people who is expecting to be paid and has applied for the job, when you ask them to pay for the job themselves, is going to agree to it. It's ludicrous when you actually step back and look at the process. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, that story just, I saw it. I saw the tweet. I saw your guys' responses to it, and I'm like, who thinks this way? Okay. Anyway, let's just move on from that before we get too deep in the weeds about stuff like this. Okay, so you guys have been alive now for 2 years. You've done, you've served the industry fantastically. That story that we just went through is a great example of what it looks like when somebody has someone else's best interest in mind. And I'm grateful that you guys have taken on that responsibility of being the gatekeepers. So moving forward here, what are your guys' next steps here? I mean, you're always developing content, some better tools. I know that I've talked to you about some other tools, about notifications, about whether it's automated or direct notifications of each step along the process. So sort of talk about your next set of ideas.
So ultimately, at the minute, as you can probably appreciate in what we've talked about in the past, is that Hitmarker is kind of funded by the other businesses that we have and has still been kind of run at a loss for the 2 years that it's existed, because we're trying to establish a market base and build a business in the long term. It was Hitmarker has always been kind of a long-term horizon idea, because we know that the industry's is still probably a little bit too young to support a jobs website in terms of the kind of to pay 5 full-time salaries, which is what it would need to do, plus freelancers that we have as well. But But ultimately, we're at a juncture now where Hitmarker has built up value. There's interest from investors in terms of taking a percentage of the company, significant sums, which will allow us to then make Hitmarker a fully fledged business and our number one priority moving forwards. And hiring ourselves, hopefully we'll be able to double the size of the team by the end of 2019.
Nice.
So ultimately, that'll mean that the features that get requested, like your feature, which we would love to implement, the minute is that the guys who do the work, the developers, are split between working on Hitmarker and working on the client work that kind of sustains us in terms of paying the bills and paying the rent on the office and all that kind of stuff. When the investment comes off, we'll be able to focus 100% of everybody's time on Hitmarker. So I think you'll see a lot of exciting developments in terms of the functionality of the website, like solving that problem between the companies and the candidates in terms of communication. We've got big plans there, like an internal messaging system and some automated messaging, exactly what you've said, being able to see when applications have been viewed, so you at least kind of know that it's been looked at, and then giving the company some easy ways to get in touch with people. We've got like a secret project that we won't share too much about underway at the minute, which is kind of another arm of Hitmarker, which we hope will be released by the end of the year or the next 3 to 6 months if everything goes to plan. So that's kind of along similar lines to Hitmarker at its core presence, but it's the beginning of us trying to branch the Hitmarker brand out into more sectors and parts of the esports industry where we think it can do good things and become a useful tool for some different elements of the industry as well.
Very nice, and I'm very happy that you said that about the secret project, because I was going to ask, what sort of secret projects that you have that you can't talk about, but that I'll ask about anyway, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we obviously won't say what it is, but it's again another idea that the company had, and it's aimed at a specific section of the esports jobs market, is about as much as we can say, where we think there's a real lack of types of people to go and a lack of a place for companies to go to find these types of people. So we're trying to fix that and to become like the number one in that, and like we have in terms of the general jobs, I would say. Very
nice, guys. Thank you once again for making time for me all the way across the world in the UK. Your how do I phrase this? Your stewardship of what you guys have created. Your stewardship is definitely something this industry needs. I always appreciate you guys on Twitter. I always appreciate the DMs that we share, the conversations like this. Thank you very much, guys, for making time for me today.
From all, Bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, and have a nice day.
You got it, guys. Thanks for coming by. Check out thegamehaus.com if you love this interview and all the other content that you find on our YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.